Welcome to the Military Millionaire podcast. I'm your host, David Prey. Today, we are here with Ryan Crownholm, who I met just kind of randomly in a Steve Sims Zoom call when we're both going to go speak in August at one of his speakeasies in LA. And we were sitting on the Zoom call, and I don't even remember if it was, I think I asked a question. I don't know. One of us was talking, and I was like, oh, Army vet. And then we just slid in the DMs, and I was like, oh, private message. I was like, oh, we should connect. And we talked. And then afterwards, I was like, you should come on the podcast because it's got a pretty cool story. And here we are. So that's the background. So Ryan was in the Army, and he's a serial entrepreneur. So he's now started 5 different companies or businesses, sold over half of them. So he's got Crown Capital Adventures, dirtmatch.com, mysideplan.com. Grassroots was construction, and then he's kind of built out from there. We'll talk about all that. And he does a lot of mentoring now for entrepreneurs, CEOs, veterans, and both current and formerly incarcerated individuals. And then he's also done a lot with crypto and NFT projects and just a lot of really cool stuff. And so we were talking, and I was just like, dude, that's a lot of just interesting kinds of businesses that I don't know anything about. And, not real estate. Well, I mean, there is real estate, but just a different topic. So I was like, this is going to be fun. So Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
Yo, what's up, Dave? Good to see you, man. Yeah, I had a fun time in the conversation with you as well. And so it's cool what you're doing on the podcast. So hopefully my journey over the past 20 years or so after getting out of the military is interesting to your listeners.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. Yeah. So I guess first question would just be, you were in the Army. What did you do in the Army? And how did, I guess, where'd you get started? How did you go from Army and what you did in the Army to starting a business?
Yeah, so in the military, I was a 14 Sierra in the Army, which is Stinger missiles, Avenger crew member. So air defense, which does not translate into a civilian job at all.
Very, very applicable. Yeah.
So got out, and it was funny. As soon as I got out, my parents were like, "Oh, you can stay with us for a little while till you get back on your feet." Well, 2 weeks later, I went to the gym, and I came back and their house had burned down. And so it was like, okay, no more house. They were under construction. And so I'm out living in my car and like sleeping on friends' couches, like, this isn't good. And so really rock bottom, which turns out is sort of a point for me where I sort of buckle up and get the most sort of motivation to get stuff done. And so I was working at the time as like a bouncer and then eventually a bartender and sort of working the restaurant scene while I was in college. And then I decided to go out and start doing hauling business. And so I had this old truck that I bought, and I threw a trailer on the back of it, and I started going to construction sites, just cleaning it up, because I could do manual labor. I love manual labor. And so by the time I graduated from college, that little sort of hauling trailer turned into a dump truck, and then another dump truck, and eventually into, by the time I graduated, about 10 trucks and 20 guys, and doing a little over $1 million a year in sales. And I thought, all my friends are graduating from college, so they're getting job offers for like $40,000 a year, and I'm, making a little 6-figure salary and like doing pretty good. And I think I'm going to stick with it. And so that business grew into, over the next, decade or so, into a pretty good sized general engineering company, demolition, so heavy equipment, trucking, excavating, as well as other offshoot businesses. So I had some recycling centers up in the Bay Area, property preservation company. I had several other businesses sprouted over the years. And so turns out I was just really bad at working for other people, kind of learned that in the military. I don't want to be an employee. And so the only option for me was to figure it out myself. And so that's what I've been doing now for 20-some years.
Yeah, well, it's, I guess, one solution to not working for other people is but what I like about that, and I originally, when we were talking, I was like, oh, wow, those are all way different businesses. And how did you get into that? And you corrected me and you were like, no, actually they all kind of tie into each other. And you explained that and how they flowed. And so I'd love for you to kind of talk through that piece, like how you went from the construction business to the recycling or what kind of that flow was, because when you said that, I was like, oh, actually that makes 100% perfect sense. And I think it's kind of like the vertical integration kind of, just like almost natural progression. I think that not a lot, but some entrepreneurs go through. Like from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, Ryan has shiny object syndrome. But then you start talking about it and you're like, oh no, actually that makes perfect sense for why those things lined up like that. If you could dig a little bit deeper into like how you started the second one. And
all the other businesses that kind of came off the main business were typically, they were like problems that I had within my business that needed to be solved. And so when you come up with a problem, I like to come up with systems or solutions. And when I have in-house solutions, it's when the solutions are good enough that often other people want those same. And so you can either take it and outsource it, have someone else do it for you, or you could open up as a profit center. So for example, the recycling centers was, we were taking a bunch of TVs, monitors, refrigerators, things like that. The landfill charged us a bunch of money for it. And I thought, well, we could just become a state recycler and just do it for ourselves. I had a 5,000 square foot warehouse, I had an acre of land. And so I went to the state and I said, hey, if the landfills are getting permits, why can't I? And they go, well, because you're a little guy. I'm like, well, that shouldn't be a rule against the little guy. What does it take to be a big guy? And so if they give me the paperwork and what I had to do to get it done, I said, I can do that. So I went through it, basically made it so I was a self-recycler. So all of our stuff would start coming back to our own facility. And then at that point, I was like, well, we're on a pretty busy street. So I wonder if I just put an A-frame sign out on the street and just open it public, what would happen? And it turns out a lot happened. Cars started coming in and we started, pretty soon we're recycling millions of pounds of TVs and CRTs and electronics. And I started making arrangements with the metal recycling companies. So they would bring me dumpsters. They were paying me by the ton. And so it turned into a nice business. I thought, hey, I could probably do another one of these. And so I opened a second center and then started doing like recycling events all around the Bay Area. And so what was a pain point for me, which is, it was an expense, I turned into a profit center. And so that was one really good one. I had some other ones too, like, in 2007, when the housing market was correcting, we were seeing a lot of these foreclosures everywhere. And I thought, hey, we got all these trucks that were having a hard time keeping busy because the new construction had turned off basically. And the economy was kind of dropping down, but we're seeing all the foreclosures. So I got to find something to do with these trucks. Start calling on banks and realtors and everyone, and ended up being one of the larger REO specialists, like clean up property preservation companies. As long as the guys were willing to strap water heaters and put up smoke detectors and weed whack and board up houses or whatever we had to do. And so grew that into a pretty good sized company as well, just to carry us through. Later after that, I also had turned into what was like a really oddball sort of niche, but the largest swimming pool removal contractor in California, where we were taking out 300 swimming pools a year. It was another niche that had sort of popped up. And I go, well, I can do that. So, specialize it, bring in a geotextiles engineer and, perfect my process and set my equipment all up for that purpose. And it was something that was sort of very repeatable. So it was very easy to train people to do the same processes over and over again. Therefore, the profitability was great. 70% margins, gross margins on a pool removal, where most of construction is, 35, 50%. So worked out really well. So I'm always just looking for opportunities. Within those businesses, there was other issues that I had, like at the end of the day, when I would, for a pool removal, I'd have to come home and I'd have to draw up my site plan. It was a huge pain in the butt. So I created a process around that. And my process made it so that now I could basically send the request to my drafters, and the drafters would have my plan in my email box in the morning. I'm like, oh, this is a huge time saver for me. I love it. And I thought, hey, I wonder if anyone else could use this service. And so I opened it up to the entire U.S. And now, we've been in business for about 9 years doing site plans, one of the largest provider of non-certified site plans in the U.S. Dirt was another issue, because we were swimming pool removal. We needed about 1,000 yards a week of dirt to fill, 5 or 8 pools. And so I had a person in my office whose job was to broker the dirt out. And so they would make phone calls, truckers, excavators, and they would just coordinate to make sure that I had the dirt that I needed, while making sure my competition wouldn't get any dirt that they need. So kind of run a little mini monopoly. And after I sold that company, I thought, that might be another one of those systems that would be really useful to other guys in construction. And so that was the dirtmatch.com. Now we are the largest online brokerage service for dirt. And so it's been very successful. Millions of yards of dirt are exchanged on Dirt Match every year. And just taking the problems that I had with my business, creating a system around it, and then asking other people if they would find it useful. And that technique has worked.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love that idea, that mentality. And I think it's great. I think I've made a lot of videos talking about how my I think the most valuable skill set that like an entrepreneur can have is like creativity and just the ability to think through a problem and be like, oh, actually, and I think those are all just really good examples of like the idea that like you didn't take an expense in a landfill and figure out a way to reduce that expense by having less items to recycle. You figured out how to completely eliminate that expense and turn it into a profit. Like most people like, oh yeah, we reduced this expense by 30% and that would be still good. Like that's not a bad thing. But to flip it upside down, to turn it from red to green and then build a business around it to turn it into a revenue generator is just a whole different way of thinking. And most people don't generally think that way. And it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about creating space in your business. A lot of people are so sort of head down in their business, trying to just get stuff done that they don't take the time to step back and sort of look at it from above and look below and look for creative solutions. And so that's been, for me, one of the most important things is like, I just go on like a couple mile walk every morning and I think about these things and these ideas bubble up and I experiment with them. And often those experiments turn into something. Sometimes they don't, but still, it's always useful practice and testing.
And yeah, the power of thinking and yeah, I like
little would have thought of.
Yeah, I know. When you're walking, have you ever read the book? Was it not Go for Stupid? It's sitting on my table right now. I can't think of the name. I'm staring at the cover of it right now. Anyway, it's in the other room, but he talks about like thinking time and like once a week you should sit down for, an hour and just focus on like one major problem in your business and ask like a really deep, big question about that and just deep dive it and how that'll change.
Yeah. It seems like some people look at that time as like wasted time. It's like we need to be productive all day long. And so they're like, people have to fill every minute with doing. And sometimes like the low hanging fruit is actually the not doing. And so like, it feels unnatural to some people when they're like, oh, I can't just go walk for an hour this morning. I got so much stuff. I think how much stuff I could get done in an hour. And it's like, yeah, but think about how much like thought that's not going to happen. Like going out and collecting different information sources and never like processing into something is pretty, to me, that's a huge waste of time. Like don't consume a bunch of information if you're not going to do it useful.
I agree. Yeah. Walk or even like when I used to train for endurance sports, like the slow, like long runs after like the first mile or two, when you kind of get into that, it's almost like a Zen state. You get into flow and it's just I used to like, at first it was like a bad habit. The Marine Corps in me would come out and I'd be like, don't pull your phone out. You can't pull your phone out and stop running, or you can't pull your phone out while you're running. I'd be like jogging down the trail trying to like type, but I would always just pull my phone out on like Google Keep and just, I'd have an idea and I would just keep notes or Google Calendar and just type it in and put the phone back. And probably some of my best ideas have come out of either a walk or a run, just once the juices get flowing. And
that runner's high is magic.
It's it's good times. It's, man, yeah, definitely not something to underestimate. And I'm glad that you said that, because you're right. People they get so wrapped up in the business that they don't take time to think. And then you wonder why you're not having any more ideas.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of people, when they're having issues in their business, they think first about like, okay, who should I bring on to solve this problem? Like, and usually they'll go out to like a consultant, and a consultant will come on and charge them a bunch of money to look from an outsider's perspective into your business and try to tell you what's wrong with it, when nobody knows your business better than you. So you're actually the best consultant you could ever hire for your business, because that you haven't taken the time to like stand and look at it from an outside. And so the consultant is just going to waste your money. I mean, they're going to come out, they're going to give you some BS, and even you're going to look, they say like, oh, every time, exactly the same, right? And so that's where, for me, it's like, okay, I just need to be the consultant. I need to have separation. And it's when I have that separation and I look at it, and that's where my gains come.
That's huge. I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. That's huge. So, okay, so you've run a bunch of different businesses. I'd imagine you have a decent team. You're obviously good at the system side. What are some of the things that you've learned over the years that have really helped you as far as, like, I guess, like putting those systems together, or putting the right people in place to help run those systems? Because obviously you are most likely, well, I should say obviously, I would imagine that if you're able to step aside and take time to think, you're probably not running all 5 businesses or all of the businesses on your own. There's probably, like you said, systems in place and people in place. So what are some of the things that you've, have helped you along the way with building all that out so that you're able to still take time? Because most people can't find that in one business.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've had to learn over the time just to perfect my hiring process. So getting really, really good people on board, and people who are creative and, basically are self-managed people who work within bounds. So I do create very solid systems, and I give them bumpers. It's like you ever go bowling with a kid and you put those like bumpers in the bowling alley, and then they throw the ball so that they hit the pins, but they still let them do their thing and have fun with it. That's what my employees get. It's like, here's the bumpers. This is what you got to stay within. Use your creativity and get stuff done. Okay. And as long as all the data and everything to me is trending in the right direction, then we're all good. And so within my business, I have a lot of triggers and like feedback loops and things that make sure that all my customers are happy and my employees are happy, and that everything is working well. And then I get an email every morning that basically gives me all my key metrics that I need to look over, and then my day is done. After I look at this email, as long as I see that all my, my sales and my discounts and my returns and my conversion rates and all these different things are in line, then I'm good. So all the work that I do is like, I come in and talk to you, or, have meetings with people, or I think about things that 10x my business. So all my time needs to be spent on the 10x things, and my businesses are structured where they're going to grow at a natural rate without me. So if I disappear for this next year, my businesses will still grow 20 or 30%. If I stick around and put more time in, make them 200, 300%, or maybe 1,000%. So that's been really important for me. It's just, creating bulletproof systems, but then still having enough triggers built in within that, so that if something goes wrong, that I know immediately, so I can come in and fix it.
A lot of ways to go.
I think there's, since you're a military focused podcast, I think that there's a lot of things that I've seen in veterans that have worked for me, and other things within myself as a veteran that have been really beneficial to me as an entrepreneur. Let's throw that idea around a little bit, just because I love veterans. I mean, it's like when I was had a construction company, it was some of the only people I could find that were like really knew how to work and not complain, or at least if they complain, they just complain about each other. And actually it's like team building almost. Like, it's so, one of the things, especially in construction, is hard work, and something about when you're in the Army, like for me, I was Army, you were Marine Corps, but so you're probably tougher than I. The ability to know that you can't just walk away. Like, you have to build this this resilience to I can't just be like, oh, this is too hard, I'm gonna leave. Because that's what I would run into with a lot of the other guys that worked for me if they hadn't been in the military or hadn't been in a situation where they could just quit like another job. And so they have this ability to sort of just push past really hard things. And that in entrepreneurship is incredibly valuable, because it can be really, really hard. Although my businesses, for the most part, run themselves now, when you're starting a business, there's no way around the hard stuff. I mean, it is hard. It is defeating. It's, there's failure after failure. And if you don't have grit and resilience, you probably won't make it through. And most people don't. And so those are some things that I've seen that have helped, at least for me, that's really helped me out.
I joke all the time about the BMW phase of entrepreneurship, below minimum wage. And I joke that all the hurry up and wait and extra duty you do in the military for no extra pay trains you for that. Because it's like, by the time you get out of the military, you're like, wait, I'm working for free, but it's for me instead of the DOD. Like, this is great. I'm used to working for no extra money, but at least it's for my dream. Right.
Well, it's also, for me in the military, there was a lot of frustration around the way that things were done. And so if you're the kind of person that actually likes to optimize things and create systems and like to build things that are substantial and run well. Being in an organization like the military where they don't do that will drive you crazy enough to where by the time you get out, you're like hardcore about brewing exactly the opposite. And so like there was things that you go to the motor pool and they're like, sweep the floor. We're like, we swept the floor yesterday. It's clean, but there's like grease on the walls. Why aren't we cleaning the grease on the walls? You know, because that's not what I told you to do some push-ups. And like that kind of stuff used to just drive me crazy. Like there's things we can do to make the systems work better and we just don't do them.
Yeah, I always.
And so that was like, whatever. I think there's a lot of things that you pick up in the military. The
sweeping of the parking lot to show, how clean your parking lot was when the CG came or the Sergeant Major came, and you're like, I don't think the CG or Sergeant Major cares how clean the parking lot is. But this is fun. Thanks. Like, I'm in my Charlies out here sweeping in my core frames rather than like, because we can't, heaven forbid, we wear our nice, camouflage utilities on duty instead of nice khakis, but whatever. Oh, yeah. Like, this makes no sense. But yeah, no, I love the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
sure.
Good to have them behind us, though.
It's good times. But yeah, no, I'm glad to hear you say that about hiring veterans, because I definitely think that there's unique advantages. I mean, there's a lot of tangible skills, depending on your job, that you get being in the service, but there's a ton of, I think, unique intangible skills that service members and vets bring to the table when they come off of, active duty or even reserves. Just, I think a lot of life experience, for one, at an early age, especially. You compare a 24-year-old coming out of the service to a 24-year-old coming out of college, and I think there's a noticeable difference in the experience at that age of just what they've done in life. But then, I mean, just there's just, it's just a different, I don't want to say different breed, but I think we all know, right? Like the discipline and the grit and the, it takes a certain type of person to go. And I think a part of it is bred by the military for sure. Part of it's just that only a certain type of person goes in the military, and so it's what, chicken egg.
True. But I also think it was like, we all have like a set point, reference point of like what suck means. And like when you've spent a couple, either combat deployed or you've been in the field for a couple of weeks and you haven't taken a shower and you're hungry and you're filthy and like that's a really good set point to have. If you haven't been through that, you don't know what that feels like. And so when you go out for like an 8 or 10 hour work day and it just happens to be hard and you're dirty, you're like, well, yeah, this is nothing compared to like Bosnia when we were out for, for weeks at a time and like cover, like, you know what I mean? And so I think that is really important too. It's like with my kids, it's like I almost want to just go like throw them out in the dirt for a couple of weeks, whether they're going military or not. So at least they have that reference point of like what it really means to suck and what your body is capable of. Like the fact that you learn that it's okay if you don't sleep for 3 days, you're going to live. It's okay if you're like, you're completely exhausted. It means you're like halfway to like where fully exhausted means,
I was,
and so
Family Feud, I think 2 nights ago with the wife, and the very end where they do the 5 questions or whatever, and you have to try to get the top answer. And the question was, we asked 100 people, what's the longest you've gone without a shower or a bath? And the first person gets up and says 1 day. And I chuckled and I looked at my wife and I was like, yeah, right. Guarantee that person's gone longer than a day. They just don't want to answer that on live television.
Yeah, right.
And then the next person gets up and they say 1 day and it goes brap, and they have to answer again, and they were like 2 days. And I was like, yeah, okay, that person's also gone longer than a day and doesn't want to admit it. And then the number one answer was 1 day. I just laughed. I was like, everybody polled, just didn't want to be the person, because I was like, man, that or they just didn't ask a single veteran. I was like, a week, like a month, I don't know. Like, when you say showered is like pouring water and like baby wipes, like like we had like at least a month where it was like,
that's what I was thinking. It was like,
show up sometime, or did we like, does it count if it's like the shampoo, like you just kind of like the, you know what I mean? Like the rinse shampoo that you just, I don't need. Oh my gosh. Deployments are a whole different beast of like, there, we got some baby wipes in. I think that counts.
Yeah, I know. It's just, yeah, you clean the ball.
So you're right.
Like,
Yeah, I just went to this veteran event last week, and we were laying in the prone and 100 degrees out shooting guns in the middle of the day, and I don't think a single person complained. I mean, I had salt stains on my undershirt for the first time in a long time, and I had more fun, and it's just a good time. So, yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I love the idea, and I love the idea of hiring vets just to, the culture too. Like when I'm hiring, and I'm not, admittedly not the best at hiring, at least not yet. I still got a lot to learn, but one of the things I'm trying to do is get better at the culture side right up front, right? Either a video showcasing what the culture of my business is, or little things like at the bottom of the application saying, hey, I want you to, you can do all this stuff, but also you're going to fill out this Google form and then email your resume, your disc profile, and 3 references to this email address. And the subject needs to be badass EA applicant. And of the like 60 people who applied, like 18 people sent the email with the stuff, but only like 6 of them actually typed badass EA applicant in the subject. And I'm like, well, 6 are the only people getting an interview because they're the only 6 that were like a decent culture fit. All 6 were vets. And of those 6, like there's like 2 Air Force, 2 Army, a Marine, and a Navy. And I'm like, perfect. All 6 are like, they filled everything out. And so I'm digging through all their applications today for whatever. But I was like, man, 60 people applied on Indeed. 18 did the email. Only 6 of them were serious enough to actually type the word badass into a subject line for a job. And all 6 of them happened to be veterans. And I was like, what a funny thing. Like, what a culture we have.
That's interesting.
Like, I never would have guessed that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good start when you're hiring, is just to like the basics, like have some sort of attention to detail. And that's one thing they can teach you in the military, is attention to detail. But for me, like when I'm going through by the way, I'm a huge pain. Like if I have 100 applicants, I've got like 20 of them put through a test. And then I put another, like the 10 of those I'll get rid of. And then the next 10 I'll put through a test. Get rid of 5. Next 5 I'll put through a test. And the test actually doesn't mean anything. It's more like the communication, like how quick were they turn around, like were they courteous? Do they seem like, were they anxious? Like all of the other stuff besides the actual test I'm doing is firm.
Yeah, it's like
and that's how I get down to the people.
And two of my favorite like things that I've ever heard from people with interviews, and one of them I don't think you could actually do. One of them is like you on like your 3rd or 4th interview, you just like on the way to the interview, you go shopping with the person, and then you just watch to see if they put the cart away when you're done. And that right there is the whole interview. But the other one is so that was,
you go shopping.
So I haven't, but I heard someone say once that what they do is they will get in the car to like go to lunch and then be like, oh, hey, we got to go run and do whatever real quick. And they will like stop off to like run an errand at like Target, and they'll like, whatever. And they'll have a cart and some like obscure thing. And somehow they'll have it to where the applicant has the cart. And like the entire interview is literally to see if the applicant puts the cart away once they drive off, I'm like, I don't know how you'd pull that off, but it's like, they're like, yeah, there's no social reward for whether they put the cart away or not. So if they do, they're my kind of people. And if they don't, then I don't want to work with them. And they don't know that that's the interview. So it's just a real test of their character. I'm like, I don't think I could pull that off. But the other one that I find interesting though, is they'll do like the 2nd or 3rd interview over lunch, and they'll just show up 20 or 30 minutes early and tell the waiter like, hey, no matter what, mess up their order. I just want to see how they react. I was like, that one you could pull off. And that's an interesting test to see someone's personality. Because I've seen some people get really mad over that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that would be good. Like even just being in a car with them would be good. Like let them drive. If someone puts their blinker on, do they like speed up not to let them in? Or are they that guy? Like I don't want that.
It's amazing when you think about it, like how much of hiring doesn't actually come down to what you know at all. Like, I mean, you got to have some app skills, but
well, you hire on potential. Like you can train anybody to do any job, but what's more important is like the work ethic and like whether they're a nice person. You can't train someone to have better work ethic or to be a nicer person. It just doesn't work. But you can train
or to keep their cool in a stressful situation.
I'll go with the hardworking person who's like fun to be around, who doesn't know how to drive a tractor, over the guy who's like worked at 10 different companies, knows how to drive a tractor, but he's a complete jerk and everyone hates him.
Yeah, the guy
I got no need for him. So.
Definitely more valuable to me than, and in the old like at the very bottom of my application, I have like one of the requirements is that you have to be able to pass the chug a beer test. Like, would I be willing to meet this person to drink a beer on Friday night? If you're not like cool enough, like, not that I'm gonna go and drink with all my employees, but like, if we don't jive enough that you're the type of person I'd be willing to go have a beer with, then it's just not going to work in the company. Like, sorry, because, well, for one, I like to be able to be like, it's Friday, we're going to go have a beer for lunch, and you're going to go home. I don't care, like, whatever. And not that you have to have a beer, but like, that's the culture. Like, if you want, like, I have scotch in the office, so if you want to have a glass before when we celebrate a win, like, whatever. I didn't create my own job so that I couldn't have scotch in the office, so whatever. But that's the whole perk of culture, I guess, right? So, and again, you don't have to drink, but you just have to be cool enough that I would feel comfortable having a beer with you. And if I get the vibe that, like, it's actually kind of funny. Man, I don't know if I should say this. They don't listen, so it's whatever. When I was engaged, we were planning out the wedding, and my now sister-in-law, we were in the car. This might be the only time I ever rode in the car with this sister-in-law. And she, for reference, she smokes, and I, or at least did at the time, and I know enough to know that she has partaken in alcohol, or at least did, right? Like, so this is not somebody who has never drank in their life and just has like a bad taste, right? But we were planning out the wedding. We're talking about it in the car, and we were having it at a Baptist church. So like, limited dancing or no dancing. And then like so the after party was like, we're coming back to the father-in-law's barn. He's got like a 50, this is Missouri. We've got like a 50 by 80 or 50 by 60 barn, massive barn with like an apartment built into the back. And
cool.
And so we're going to, the after party is like, we're coming back. We'll might have some dancing, but we'll have some beer, some pizza, people can hang out, whatever. Right. And so like in the car, she was like, you're not going to have alcohol at that part, right? Like you shouldn't have alcohol at your wedding. And like that one comment, like literally we got out of the car and I looked at my wife and I was like, I kept my tongue, I bit my tongue, but like she lost me. Sorry. Like, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I actually don't drink, but if I have people over at my house, I always make sure I have some beer and alcohol there. Like, come on. So some of my friends are just downright boring if they don't. It's like, I'll be sober, but
I might have one or two glasses of something a month. Like I'm not a drinker really either. But it's just the idea that like, if you're the type of person who is, just like that you're not cool with like being like light, like you're just stuck up enough that like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? It's just like the culture thing where it's like, look, I just want to be easygoing, carefree, whatever. And part of that is like, hey, if you want to have a beer, have a beer. If you don't want to have a beer, don't have a beer. I don't care. Just don't get it till you die.
That's just like everything else in life, right? It's like live and let live. You do your thing. I'm going to do mine as long as
if you're going to work in the company, you got to be cool enough like that I could feel safe having a beer around you and you're not judging me. And if I feel like you're going to judge me for having a beer, then I'm not going to pay you. Sorry. Like, you can go judge someone else. So anyway, all right. So we probably beat the cold.
That's right.
Enough there. So tell me a little bit about this NFT project or the stuff that you've been messing with, and then we'll talk some of the mentorship that you've done, and probably wrap things up.
Yeah. So I've been just, let's say, curious about the crypto space since probably 2013. That's read the Satoshi white paper at the time, and I thought, this is actually very cool. So I was intrigued by it, enough to buy a few Bitcoin. And just to understand the basics of the technology, and then I just forgot about it after that till 2017. That Ethereum came out, smart contracts, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting too. And so went down that rabbit hole to understand it, and so kind of had been an outsider for quite a while, but had a pretty good grasp of kind of how everything worked and what the potential was and what the uses might be. Still waiting for to see them come to fruition, but. I think when the NFT stuff came out, it started to get really interesting. And so one of my friends is Scott Kelly. So he's an astronaut, former fighter pilot. And I was at his house, and he's showing me these pictures he has from space. And at the same time, the Ukraine war was just breaking out. And he has family that's Ukrainian. Plus he's also friends with a lot of Russian cosmonauts who were not pro, war. And so we got into a conversation about what can we do to raise some money for the people out there, just for support for the people that are being displaced, to start getting them clothing and food or whatever we could do, and just bringing stuff into Poland. Why don't we do some more? Let's do something based off of your time in space. And so originally we were looking at the photos that he had, which were absolutely amazing. But then we ended up just getting an artist together and did this really cool generative art of just. Some of it Ukrainian theme stuff. So if you could have a soccer ball, but he's in space outfit. And he's if you go to OpenSea, you can see the stuff we did on there. It was look up Scott Kelly NFT and you'll see the stuff. But we raised about $500,000 in 6 hours selling these NFTs, and we donated 100% of the proceeds. And so actually it was cool because when we donated it to the organization. They went and they printed off a bunch of them in the pallet that they were bringing them into Ukraine. They put our artwork on the side of the pallets, and they sent us a bunch of pictures of it. And so that was super rewarding. But that was, that was one project. And I've dabbled in some other, as far as working with teams. I have some friends that are in the movie industry. And so we've looked at, doing movie memorabilia and things like that based on NFTs as well. We started an organization called the Western NFT Partners, and me and a handful of other guys have been putting together some different ideas where we could sort of leverage their insider Hollywood stuff into the NFT space. And so it's been fun. To be honest, I the past year or so I've backed off of that space some, just because the things have just really imploded in a way that's let's just say the space is not looking so hot right now. The technology is the same. It's still moving forward. Actually, it's probably better that things have imploded because they can get back to business, instead of a lot of the speculators have gone away. And so, but I'm not currently doing any more projects until there's a little bit more regulatory clarity, and it's not worth the risk at the time for me right now.
I mean, that's super cool that you were able to raise through that. It's a very interesting space, and I think there's a lot of potential with some of it. It's one of those, I think it's like the .com thing, right? Where it's I think 70-80% of the kind of stuff that's floating around in the crypto world is probably going to just kind of disappear. I can't exactly see a real world application for, Cum Rocket or whatever that crypto, some of those coins that are floating around, but I think that the technology behind
I've got a lot of comfort on
Doge, and
I think
but I think that the blockchain technology and some of the applications for NFTs and the Ethereum and some of that stuff is very fascinating and has a lot of potential over the next decade probably to just revolutionize a lot of stuff. And so it's pretty cool to watch some of the projects that are unfolding kind of in the background right now, because it's not as mainstream as the prices are kind of down, but once they pick back up it'll become loud again. It's always funny how that all works. But
Yeah, and I don't know if it, that attachment to the price is, I think, part of the thing that bothers me about it. So it's been 10 years now that I've been sort of playing with the crypto space, and I don't use any crypto on a day-to-day basis. I think the Bitcoin is valuable to have just a sort of a cachet of, money on the side that you have access to that no one else can take from you. That's great. As far as the other things, the NFTs, I've got some artwork and stuff that I keep that's not, it's not really worth much. I just kind of like it. But there's nothing like on a day-to-day basis. And so when a new technology comes out, like AI, like I'm on ChatGPT and Bard every day. Like it's immediately was incorporated into my workflows. And so that was a technology that was like, well, this is really useful because it's here and it's here to stay and I'm using it every single day. Whereas the crypto stuff hasn't done that yet after a decade. And that kind of, I think that
agree with that
is a little bit of a red flag.
Like I see some real world applications for things like blockchain and NFT potentially replacing title companies or, stuff like that. But it's going to take a long time for that stuff to come to fruition. But then, like you said, ChatGPT is all over. I mean, I've replaced a lot of processes within my business or at least dramatically decreased the time for said processes within my business.
Oh, I'm a straight up drama queen. I came to work one day and my ChatGPT wasn't working. I went home. I'm like, how about I'll work without this? Like, how am I supposed to work just as a regular human? That's ridiculous.
That's
so
hilarious.
Yeah,
I have a friend.
It's that level already.
I told all my employees that they're no longer allowed to ask questions on Google. It's all ChatGPT now. They're like, if you were going to Google a question, you ChatGPT it. I was like, oh, that's actually a pretty interesting take.
I pay for every one of my employees to get on the ChatGPT Plus.
Absolutely worth it.
So $20 a month or $20, and I make them use it in every part of their job every day because each one of them can 10x their productivity. If they use it.
So now you're doing some mentorship and you're working. I know you've done some mentorship within local prisons, right? Is that?
Yeah, I do. Well, in prisons and then also at the halfway houses and then after they get out as well. And so I have a book club that I run because a lot of times the guys when they were in, they learned, a passion for reading, but maybe didn't just read the right stuff. And so I've got a book club where we go through a lot of these sort of foundational readings that can help them, kind of, the whole idea is like, when I got out of the military, I was kind of had a pretty hard landing, meaning I had zero to my name. And living my car, was able to leverage my own skills, what I had, into growing a business. And I stumbled probably for the first decade. Like I did pretty well, but I made a ton of mistakes. And so here these guys are, they made a huge mistake when they were, most of them when they were young, right? They're under 25 years old and they're, full of testosterone, no guidance, and they do dumb things. And then a decade later, their prefrontal cortex develops and they're like, okay, I screwed up and now they want another chance. So I think that my skill set can kind of help them sort of fast forward through the decade of sort of wasted time that I did, and I can help them sort of get past that. And so really just say, what can you do? You're strong. Can you clean a kitchen? Can you work on a car? Or can you throw up sheetrock? Like, let's leverage that into a job because, a lot of these guys have a hard time finding a job. No one wants to hire someone with a criminal record. And so just helping them, leverage that into their own sort of self-employed position. And then from there, if they have the chops, take it from being a self-employed person into being a business, which means, staffing up and growing something, where you start to leverage other people's labor to your.
Do you have any, if you don't mind, what are some of the, top like 2 or 3 books that you try to walk people through at the beginning stages of that book club?
Yeah, so one of them I wanted was Atomic Habits by James Clear because it's almost like a prerequisite. It's like, because if you're going to read a bunch of books about creating new habits, we should probably teach you how to make habits first. And so that's one that I like to start with, and it's actually sort of thematic. So as we're going through the books, we're reflecting back to the other books, and so after that we do like. How to win friends and influence people. How do you talk to people? How do you grow a network? How do you, like, those things have been really helpful. And then, like a E-Myth Revisited, one like that would be good. The War of Art is a great one. So there's a handful of that the guys get a lot of value out of it. I just try to make them sort of where they're cumulative, where the knowledge just stacks. And also just really applying everything directly to their business. Like when we're reading Atomic Habits, we're not just reading the knowledge, we're creating habits. Like, let's pick something. Like for me, I was like, well, I'm gonna do habit stacking. And so I started doing, as I hit my Keurig in the morning and I stand there looking stupid for 60 seconds, waiting for the thing to finish a cup of coffee, I get down to push-ups. So like, it's like making that, like now I do push-ups every day for 1 minute in the morning, and I can knock out about 45 push-ups, and like, rather than standing there looking stupid. Or like, as I'm, 47 years old, I'm getting older, I wanted to work on balance. And so I decided another one was like, I'm going to stand up and put my socks and shoes on while standing on one leg. And so I like put a sock on, put my shoe on, tie the shoe and everything. And my balance is improving. And so every person in there is working on things, and so that's like this idea of like learning a new, like not just like we talked about earlier, not just reading and not ingesting information, but digesting information.
And those are all great books.
To action.
I probably need to reread Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Like physical copy. I've audiobooked it, and I have read the physical copy a while back. I probably need to do it again. It's a good one. You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, really good one.
Creating habits for sure. That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. Well, Ryan, I know I'm at least coming up towards where I got to get out of here, go pick a kid up for baseball here soon. Is there anything that we missed that you think we should cover?
Yep. I don't think so. I'm happy to just revisit it later on, but it's good to chat.
Where can people get a hold of you if they'd like to reach out?
Yeah, just check out ryancrownholm.com or at Ryan Crownholm on pretty much every platform, because there's not any other Ryan Crownholms out there.
I love it. This was super valuable. I think we had a really good conversation. I'm sure people got a lot out of this, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person in August and hearing your presentation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, likewise, man.
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right, we'll talk soon.